Hard work, discipline, fundamentals. These are just three things that I learned from today's guest at an early age, as he was my first basketball coach. But before we meet today's guest, make sure you push that subscription button, as well as the notification bell so you never miss another episode with another amazing professional here on the Pro Talk podcast. Well, I mentioned he's my first basketball coach growing up in Western Pennsylvania, but he's also a Hall of Famer. He's amassed over 480 victories, almost 500 or high school coaching victories. He's also a Hall of Famer. So without any further ado, I want to welcome Coach Paul Sapotichne. Coach, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm glad you're here. And I know that we got several other people that I grew up with that are familiar with you. And I appreciate the insights that you're going to bring to the Pro Talk podcast today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been interviewed many times, but never on a podcast. So I just was talking to my oldest son. He's a professor at Michigan State and asking for any tips. And he just told me be myself.
There you go.
That,
Uh,
that was what he
okay.
said.
Yeah. Well, before anybody thinks this is me promoting my Boston Celtics, basketball was my first love. A lot of people don't know that because I'm a tennis instructor. But my dad, he saw me watching TV early 70s, and he said, "You watch that team. They play great team ball." And I fell in love with John Havlicek and been a lifelong Celtic. So you're probably what people call a lifer, that you've been a college, or excuse me, high school coach since about all your adult life. Is that correct?
That is correct. I will be, I'm still coaching, by the way. I will be starting my fourth year as a head high school coach with a couple years as a college assistant thrown in there. But almost all the years had been as a head high school basketball coach and still love it as much as I ever did.
I could tell that. I was talking to you recently. You're telling me about the uh, voluntary practices for next year. You got a program building there.
Workouts. I gave them 3 weeks off. We made the playoffs this year, which is a low bar, but for us, this is my second term back at Greensburg Salem, and the program has not been very good recently. Last year, I got the job late, and we struggled, but I thought we showed improvement. 2 weeks, 3 weeks after the season was over last year, we started working and worked hard. More workouts than games. We need so much work. Just playing games isn't enough. Our workouts are similar to practices. There's no fooling around. You don't have to be here. I tell them all the time. So if you're coming, you're going to listen and you're going to work hard. And we improved dramatically. We doubled our win total from last year, made the playoffs for the first time in a long time since I was there the first time. Yeah, so it was, and I'm excited about next year. My two best players are sophomores. I have a very good group of eighth graders, which will be in ninth that can play for me next year. I talked to football players who haven't played in a couple years to come out, so they're coming to workouts and they will help us. So yeah, so it's, my next work. I had to cancel workout yesterday because there was some kind of fundraiser in the gym, which is fine. But Monday from 7 to 8:30, I'll be in the gym again with my assistants, and we'll be spending a lot of time. We're getting between, say, 14 and 18 kids each workout, which is kind of amazing when you think the season doesn't start for about 9 months. And if they keep coming and keep working, we're going to be better again.
Yeah. I remember those messages that you talked about, that we don't get better by taking days off, and always honing those fundamentals. So you grew up as a little kid, much like I did with your dad, listening to the Pirates. So can you explain to, to the people they're listening in, about you learning basketball as your dad listened to the Pirates?
Yes, we had court in our driveway, and I liked the Pirates. My dad loved the Pirates, and I would shoot every single day. And every evening I would shoot in the driveway. Sometimes my next door neighbor would come over. Sometimes I was by myself. And my dad would come out and watch. And my dad never played basketball. So he just pretty much preached, work hard. Whatever you like, do the very best you can do. So he would listen to the Pirates and I would shoot for hours, pretty near every day. And to this day, I like the Pirates more. And when I listen to a Pirate game or see a Pirate game, I think of my father. and he has passed a long time ago. But yeah, so that was, he encouraged me, and so did my mom, that if you want to do something, you got to work at it. I had a little bit of size, but I was never a great athlete. And, I had a pretty good high school career because I spent a whole lot of time and got better. That's kind of how I believe you have to do it. I've never been blessed with 7 footers or 6, 8 guys that can play like crazy. I've never coached a private school or Catholic school. I've coached small public schools where you have limited enrollment and limited boundaries. I've always coached a team with boundaries. I can't get someone, 30 miles away from another district. If you got to live in our district to play for me, and I believe the only way we're going to get better is by working at it. And I been doing that my whole career, and I'll continue to do that till I don't coach anymore.
So, did you play any other sports besides basketball growing up?
I played baseball. I could have played football. The football coaches talked to me, and I could throw, a story when I was little, punt, pass, and kick. I don't know if you remember that, but I could throw the football quite far. And I remember I went down myself to the field with a friend. My mom and dad didn't come, and my punt was awful, my kick was terrible, and my pass went over the boundary, which was like 50, 60 yards, and into the creek behind the boundary. And people were just like looking, and I won the whole thing, even though my punt and my kick just went sideways. Yeah, so I could have played, but I just liked basketball. Something clicked. I played baseball at Westminster for a year, Westminster College. I never played high school baseball, but played Legion baseball and Pony League, all those things like that. But I hated just sitting there. I would always think like I'm in the bullpen in Legion baseball and I could be home working on my basketball game. So I was much more of a basketball player
Yeah.
than, other sports.
Yeah. Well, you followed your heart. That's it's okay. Who was your toughest teacher or coach growing up?
Well, when I was in grade school, I had the advantage. I'm 2 now. I thought I was 6'3", but I think I've shrunk in the last so many years. But I was as tall as I am now when I was in 8th grade. And of course, people thought I was going to be 6'11", and all this. So a lot of people spent extra time with me. Our grade school coaches were really good to me, mentored me, would take me to high school basketball games to watch, and everyone thought this was gonna be this really tall, pretty good player. I was a good player in grade school, but they never kinda looked at my mom and dad. My mom, was 5'9", and my dad was 5'8". So me getting to 6'6" or 6'8" was never gonna happen.
Uh-huh.
The toughest coach I ever had was a legendary coach, though I only had him in grade school, was Chuck DiVinzio. Very famous, legendary coach. He coached Ambridge to arguably the best high school basketball team in the history of Pennsylvania. And his son, Dick DiVinzio, was the greatest high school player I ever saw at 5'8". And so Dick dated the girl that lived next door to us, which was fantastic for me because she was never ready. Okay, so he would come to pick her up, and I was in the driveway shooting. And of course, I would know sometimes that Dick was coming because my buddy would tell me. So I had to be out in the driveway.
Uh-huh.
So Dick would always come over and shoot with me. And it's like this legendary player, high school, and he went to Duke on a full scholarship in college. But his father, I would go to workouts with his father. His dad was quite an interesting character, but he did coach me, thought I had some potential, and he was difficult, but I knew that he wanted me to get better. So at an early age, I had a pretty difficult coach. Yeah, I've had some other coaches that all of them, I think, had my best interest in mind, but he was probably the most difficult guy I've ever played for.
Well, you might have answered my next question. Did in our days growing up, we had maybe three channels that we watched on TV, and I don't even think the NBA games were live. So, did you have a favorite role model athlete, basketball player growing up to look up to?
Well, yeah, I did. And you're right. I don't think the NBA games were live. And there was maybe one game on a week, though I would get Sports Illustrated and I would read about them and so forth and so on. But there was a player that played for the Los Angeles Lakers, Elgin Baylor, and the way he moved his body, I thought was just phenomenal. He was very, very good, one of the better players, not the greatest player, but I really kind of watched him and tried to mimic a little bit my playing to him, trying to be able to move my, even though was never quick, could never jump very high, but I could move my body to one way or another, either avoid contact or get contact and still score. So, yeah, I liked Elgin Baylor a whole lot. Matter of fact, my nickname for a while when I was in grade school and then maybe middle school was Elgin. Just for a short period
Yeah.
of time, people knew that he was my favorite.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, he's a pretty good player.
Yeah.
Now, do you have any memories of your greatest victory as a little kid?
Well, I can remember a couple things. I kind of started late in basketball. My friends all started, second, third grade, and I never really did. I can remember in sixth grade, I was going out there was a sixth grade and then there was a seventh and eighth grade school team. And I was talking to my good friend, who's still my good friend to today. And he was trying to explain to me in the classroom what 3 seconds meant and all the other terms of basketball. And I never really had played, and it was already sixth grade. And from the moment I started playing, I don't think I ever put a basketball down until I was too old to play anymore. So our grade school team was very good, traditionally very good. It was a Catholic grade school team. And, we would play 30, 40 games when you're in seventh grade and eighth grade and things like that. So we had really good teams. When I was in high school, I went to Springdale High School, which was a smaller high school. But back then, there were only two classifications, either single A or B. And we always would play A. So we played the biggest schools. In our section, there was North Allegheny, a real big high school, North Hills, Shaler, Fox Chapel. They're graduating 5, 6, 7, 800 kids. And I think we graduated about 250 my senior year, but we were always competitive. Had some kids that loved to play. Came in second, 3 straight years, my sophomore, junior, and senior high school. And back then, to make the playoffs, you had to come in first. So I always missed the playoffs as a player, but I was enjoyed it and played against good people and got better. And I think I tell my players all the time, I think it has to become important to you. For me, whatever reason, basketball was super important. I remember going from grade school practice, jumping in the car at home. My dad would take me to the New Kensington YMCA. So if practice was over at 6 o'clock, grade school, I would be at the Y till my dad would pick me up at 9 or 10 at night, and that would go all the time. I just loved playing, and I did. I played all the time, and ended up becoming a pretty good high school player. Not a great player or not a good college player, but a pretty good high school player. But I loved every minute of it.
Do you remember your worst defeat? Was it one of those that you finished second or?
Well, yeah, I remember more of my coaching defeats. It seems like they stay with me forever. I think this is a little bit of what you're asking, I think. Maybe the worst moment I ever had in playing basketball was my junior year in college at Westminster. And basketball to that point was everything to me. I mean, that's what I did. I was a basketball player myself. That's just what I was. Back then, Westminster was NAIA, and they gave money, they gave scholarships. My family was terrific and worked real hard, but didn't have a whole lot of money. And I didn't have to pay anything to go to Westminster. So my first 2 years I played some varsity, was played on the freshman team my freshman year and varsity my second year. And my junior year, I got cut. And it was probably for that day, hour week the most traumatic thing I've ever gone through. It's all of a sudden now I'm not playing basketball. And when I look back at it, not many universities need a 6'2" forward, and that's what I was. I was not a guard. I was a forward, even though I did all these good things in high school, but still I was playing against smaller people. And the coach, though I thought I should have made the team, it wasn't up to me, and he cut me. And it was really hard for me to get over that. But I think in the long run, it clearly helped my coaching and my outlook on basketball and my outlook on life probably. But that was clearly the most difficult basketball loss I've ever had.
Sure. Now, when you were a kid growing up, did you get trophies just for playing, or did you only get trophies if your team won?
I don't think I got many participation trophies, but and we did get trophies because we were pretty good in baseball or basketball. But yeah, no, there was no, and my parents were never there. I mean, they were there for me. They were at the house for me. They wanted to know how it went. My dad was a steel worker. He worked hard, and when he was done, he was done. He came home. And rested. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I was the only child, but she worked all the time. So I would come home and tell them about the events and things like that, or I got a trophy, but was never, they were always happy for me, but it was never like sometimes you see today, parents are gushing over their children and things, that didn't necessarily happen to me, which was fine. They were more, okay, well, you won this. How did you win it? How many people were participating? They wanted to know some facts and not just, look, I got this trophy kind of
Right.
thing. Yeah. So, it was a good household to grow up in, played sports every single day. That's what I did.
Yeah. So getting into your coaching career, you took that adversity as not playing your senior year because you were a high school player. You got a scholarship to Westminster. You said you got cut in your junior year. And can you tell us the story about becoming a grad assistant to start your coaching career as a senior?
Yes. Well, it was and there was not one person. I mean, back then, my wife, Jan, and I were still married. We'll be 50 years in August. And she was my girlfriend back then. And, she consoled me. My parents consoled me. Friends did. But it wasn't like, okay, got cut from basketball, but your life's not over. Now, it took me a few days or a week or whatever because it was very devastating. Then I decided, well, what am I going to do? Well, I love basketball. So, okay, well, if I can't play on the college team, I surely can maybe coach. And one of the couple things happened from after I got cut until my senior year. Number one, I remember an ad in the paper. It was, I think, in the Post Gazette, and it said they needed college counselors at an all sports camp in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania. And I had no idea where Waynesboro was, but my mom and dad were always supportive. Whatever I asked them to do, I make fun that if I told my mom I was going to move to Alaska, she'd tell me to dress warm, and get a hold of her once in a while. So I could kind of do what I needed to do. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to work this basketball camp. And it was a 5-week long camp in Waynesboro, and I was going to be a basketball counselor. So I remember going to a hotel in Pittsburgh, and a couple college coaches were there, interviewed me, and it was a big deal. And I got the position. So that year between my junior and senior year, I went off to Waynesboro and I coached basketball every day for 5 weeks, morning and night. I lived with 14-year-olds in a cabin. That was where I stayed. And all I did was coach basketball, to meet a lot of the other basketball counselors, a lot of good players from different schools we became friends with. And that's what I did. And I think I did a pretty good job. I was real conscientious and serious about it. That the last week they had a tradition they called where the older guys stayed, the 15, 16, 17-year-olds, they called it a nest. And there must have been 50 in there. And they got a team from the nest. And they would play an all-star team for the younger guys, 14, 13-year olds. And I remember the two college coaches asked me, would I like to coach the younger guys? And I said, sure, I would love that. So there was about 2 weeks before the game, and I'm going to be the coach. Well, I took it real serious. Like we practiced every day. It's like, if I'm going to do this. So there was, I had about 12 kids from different, I knew some of them, some I didn't. The camp was gigantic. There had to be 500 kids there. And I picked what I thought were the best kids. I had some help in picking them. And after sessions, after swimming, after whatever you do at a camp, we would go for like an hour and a half and we would really practice. And I loved it. Kids and I became very, very close. And the nest, of course, they just laugh. I'm thinking they're bigger, stronger, never lost before to the camp. Make a long story short, we played the nest. The whole camp was there. So it was a gigantic outdoor kind of crowd with all the campers there. And we beat them. We beat them 51-50. I was so excited. Matter of fact, the only reason I remember that score is the campers that my team got a basketball for me and signed it all and wrote the score in there. And I've kept that. I have it till today. I still have it. Okay. And it got me so excited. I can remember too, like, everyone was happy. Oh, what a great thing. You did a good job, all this and that. And I remember I went out with my own money and bought them all T-shirts. Okay,
Nice.
in Waynesboro downtown, and I remember getting really yelled at about that from the college coaches, like, "You can't do this, this and that." Well, I wanted to do it, and I did it, and got a little bit of guff over it, but that was fine. So all of a sudden now, maybe I want to coach. So I become a senior at Westminster. New coaches came in, which was invaluable to me. Two very good coaches, Ron Galbraith, legendary Hall of Fame coach, and Dave Rooney, an outstanding basketball coach. So they came in, well, my senior year, and now I've been at Westminster 4 years. I'm the director of a dormitory, freshman dormitory. I know everyone on campus. The being cut my junior year didn't seem to sting as much, especially because the coach that cut me got fired. So he's no longer there. So there's two new coaches. So the new coaches come in and we're working out all the time, and I'm working out again. I'm going to come out, but I'm smarter now. I'm looking around and saying, like, I'm doing okay. But, I'm still a 6'2" forward. We're not going to win a whole lot of games with a 6'2" slow forward that can't jump, but can smart and can play. So the two coaches advertised in the local paper, the campus paper, that they needed a grad assistant. And I read it, and I'm a senior. I'm not a grad assistant, but I'm a senior. And I weighed my options. I think I'm going to be their assistant. So I remember cutting out the article and going into their office, and they're looking at me like, "Are you nuts?" They go, "First of all, we think you're going to make the team. Like you're going to be a player." And I said, "Well, how much will I really play?" And he said, "Well, we don't know." They were being nice. And I'm looking around saying, I'm one of the top 10 or 12 players, but I'm not clearly, a great player for them. And this would really get me into coaching. And I told them, I said, I know everyone on campus. I know your father, the dean, very well. Okay. I said, everyone I know, I know how things work here. They're new coming in, even though Galbraith was there years and years ago. But it was like, I said, I think I can help you. And I know that you can help me. So I become the grad assistant as a senior assistant. And they treated me just like I was a grad assistant. I was at every practice. I recruited and scouted with them. I remember driving up to Buffalo and recruiting a kid. And one of the other things that kind of helped me, I think, is one of the coaches, the one assistant who was a great guy, got in a little bit of trouble driving wise. And he was not able to drive then for like the next 6 months or 3 months or whatever it was. Well, I was his freshman assistant and the varsity assistant. And he said, "Well, Paul, now it's you and I." So I went with him every day. Like, practice is over. My classes are over. Practice is over. I said, "Where are we going tonight?" He says, "We're scouting this kid in Sharon." I would go with him. Here I am, 20, 21 years old, and I experienced everything that a college assistant can experience. I experienced some late nights in some shady restaurants. I experienced scouting and recruiting. And so I was like a full time, but I was a student, and it worked out perfect when I graduated. And back then, there weren't many teaching positions. I remember getting 4 or 5 teaching positions. I was an English major, and I wanted to be a teacher, and I got them because of coaching. They all had JV coach or coach involved. And here is this guy that already coached college. And it wasn't like, a position that, I didn't do anything. I mean, I was out on the floor working with them, learning from them. And so that unbelievably helped my coaching career, kick-started it, went to Wilmington, and was a JV coach for 1 year. The only time in my 44 years that I was a JV coach or an assistant coach. And the head coach there was a very nice man, and he retired and recommended me. And at 22, I'm a head high school basketball coach at Wilmington. And that kind of my career is as far as coaching goes. It's been, I've been coaching ever since.
Yeah. How long were you at Wilmington?
I was there 4 years. I was there 1 year as a JV coach, 3 years as the head basketball coach. 3 years I was an English teacher. Then I got my master's in counseling. In the 4th year, I was the guidance counselor and loved it. Loved it. I loved Wilmington. I loved it. But circumstances happened. I was a little bit too impatient with my coaching. I thought, well, college assistant 1 year, JV coach, 3 years as a head coach, I should be able to go to Pitt and coach. I was a little bit too, yeah. And make a long story short, I did get an assistant position at Montana State University through some of the football coaches. And back then it was, interviewed over the phone and stuff, and they had a position. And I also got a position as a grad assistant at Western Kentucky. So, and what happened was life did. Gian and I are coming back from Western Kentucky, and I'm thinking about taking the position. And, what a kickstart to my career this would be at Western Kentucky. Could go on to here, there, wherever. And coming home, my wife didn't feel very well. And we found out that she was pregnant with our first child. So all of a sudden at Wilmington High School, I'm making $6,000 as a teacher coaching, and the grad assistant position is going to pay $3,000 in Bowling Green, Kentucky. It was a no-brainer.
Right.
And yeah, but I stayed in high school then, other than 1 year at St. Vincent. But yeah, the whole me being cut, I was able to, I'm not sure how or why, maybe just loving basketball as much as I do, turn that into something that became now my life. That's what I do.
Yeah. So after Wilmington, excuse me, you went to Greensburg. Is that where you
Yes.
or what?
Yeah,
83 to for a long time, right?
yeah, for 29 years as the head coach. Well, really, the year that I went to Greensburg, I wasn't coaching. I kind of left. I'm going to learn a new business. My father-in-law was a real estate appraiser, and he didn't like the idea of his only grandson, going to move to Kentucky or Bozeman, Montana. And I can remember he called me in his office and said, "Paul," he said, "why do you want to go away?" He said, "I own this business. It's really good. I could teach you the business." I knew nothing about being a real estate appraiser, but I remember a line he told me. He said, "If you work really hard, and I think that you're a hard worker, you could earn up to $30,000 a year." And I thought no one made that much but the president. Now I look back, it makes me laugh. But 30,000 a year is what he promised. And then, so 1 year I did not coach. Then St. Vincent opened up. Bernie Matthews, legendary coach there, who was a tutor. He tutored me. I was his assistant for 1 year and loved it. He liked me, and he was hard. He didn't like a lot of people, but he liked me. I loved him. But it was just learning a new business and recruiting and scouting. and all that stuff. It was like crazy. And I remember coming home from Edinburgh scouting. Awful, awful, awful weather, snow and crazy. I can't see the road. And I'm driving on 79, Route 79, coming back toward Pittsburgh. And I thought I was going to die. And I was praying. I go, God, please, please, please. If I get home safe, I promise I will resign. Like, just let me get home. And I remember getting home. It had to be 2, 3 in the morning. Jan was asleep. And I kind of shook her. She didn't get up. But I said, you know what? I'm going to resign after this year. I prayed so hard, I felt like something bad would happen to me if I didn't follow through with my promise. And it was too much running around and stuff. And I resigned. Bernie Matthews and I became very good friends during that and after, the Greensburg Salem head coaching job opened. They were awful. They opened. I knew no one at the school because I was just in Greensburg for a year, year and a half. And I was at St. Vincent then. So I just applied and got the job. And then 29 years, I was the head basketball coach at Greensburg Salem.
You
And
got
my first two, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say my first year at Greensburg Salem, my record was 2-22. My second year, it was 3-19. And I remember the newspaper writing an article that, Coach Sapotichne has 41 losses in his first 2 years, which breaks all kind of school records. But they didn't fire me. And my third year, we had one very good player. He was a freshman, and we went 11-10. And here, the next 26 years or so, we were only under 500, maybe 2 times. And the program just grew and then got very good.
Tough to read newspaper clippings like that, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a motivation thing, but it was but
Sure.
he's telling the truth.
Yeah.
I had 41 losses and we earned all of them. We were awful but we played hard. We tried.
Yeah.
Some of those kids I still see. I saw at our playoff game this year, one of the kids from one of those teams came with his son and just to watch us play. And it was like, oh my God, so just like with you and with others, I have from an early age, when you coach someone, lots of times, like with me, with my coaches, there is a connection. And that's kind of a cool connection. And probably another one of the many reasons why I love coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't let you get away without saying that you were a 2009 AAA Coach of the Year.
Well, we had a pretty good team. What was neat about that is that was the furthest Greensburg. Well, Greensburg Salem rarely, in my tenure there, we won the section 7 times and made the playoffs 20 sometimes after we got going, which was a great thing for us. And administration loved it, and fans loved it. We had great crowds. But we never got real far in the playoffs. We'd lose in the quarterfinals at a Whippy, or we'd lose in the first round of the state. And in 2009, we had a very good team, great young men. We make the playoffs. We don't even win our section. We come in second in the section, get to the semifinals of the WPIL, Western Pennsylvania, but we got to be in the state playoffs. And we played 4 state playoff games. The first game we played, we were down double digits in the fourth quarter. We come back to win. The second playoff game we played Shar Valley with Timmy McConnell and his legend or TJ McConnell,
Okay.
who still plays for Indiana
Yeah.
Pacers, and his dad, and we beat them at the buzzer. In the third game, we play Farrell at Slippery Rock, beat them at the buzzer. The fourth game, we play Hampton, who had beat us in the semifinals of the Whitfield. They have 269 guys, and we beat them. I won't say at the buzzer, but my best player made 2 foul shots with like 3 seconds to go, and we beat them. So the run was unbelievable. The town, Greensburg, had a parade for us. I told my team, I said, we're going to be in a parade. And they're like, Coach, they're rolling their eyes. And I said, well, it's nice they're doing this. I thought there'd be like 50 people there, thousands of people in Greensburg, and we're walking through, waving, yucking it up. And we were on radio on different programs. It just went on and on and on and on, how great it was us getting to the finals. Now we get to the finals. The first year ever in Pennsylvania that they let Philadelphia schools, Catholic and public, into the state playoffs. Okay, usually before then, it was like if you won the Philly thing, that was all you did. All right, well, now we're playing a Philly school. We couldn't have beat them with baseball bats. They were so good. Their best kid was going to Boston College, another kid going to Northeastern, one kid to Villanova, and my best player went to Edinburgh. So it was like, but we played them tough. First half was close, and we ended up losing by 15 or 18 points. But so it was neat to get the coach of the year and not win your final game. That was what was kind of cool, that some people recognize that, we were good for
Yeah.
sure, but
Right.
we didn't have, all these parade All-Americans, that's
Sure.
for sure. Yeah, so
Years.
that was
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that was a great honor
Yeah.
to get that.
Well, it's deserved, whether you won the whole thing or not. And listen to you talk about games. Years ago, my wife asked me, she said, "How can you remember that from X amount of years ago?" And I explained, and she now understands that if it emotes a feeling, it's like watching a movie. You understand what happened in that movie. You can go back and recollect all those things because you can feel it. And that's why you know the scores. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's coaching to me. I mean, I don't know what I would have ever done without it, but it's such a special profession. It was at Greens. I mean, imagine 29 years in a town, not a super small town, but maybe 15,000 people, coaching there 29 years, having a business there for 30 years. Like, I knew everyone in town. We would go in, my wife and I, we would go into a restaurant. There's two of my former players that played for me 8 years ago. There's a cheerleader there. There's an opposing coach there. I love that. I'm not sure
Yeah.
my wife always loved it, but I love that whole thing. Everyone calls me Coach Paul. They still do. Now I'm back to that Greensburg, Salem where I was, and they let the program fall apart a little bit, but we're getting better. And in between, I coached another high school called Riverview, very small, tiny high school, and we didn't have success, but we got better every year. 3 wins, 5 wins, 7 wins, 9 wins, 11 wins. We got better every year. And then I got a little sick and I couldn't do that anymore for a while. But yeah, I've been blessed with coaching great kids, coaching kids that work really hard and care and try. I've not been blessed with a lot of parade All-Americans or people like that, but it's kind of, I love going to workouts still. There'll be 15 kids there. There's seventh graders there that I'm working with, eighth graders. I'm thinking, Christ, I'm 73 years old and I'm getting excited on my drive into the workout. Sometimes I think something's wrong with me, but I love it. Can't sleep the night before a game. We win a big game. It's hard for me to go to
Yeah.
sleep that night. I mean, that's been going on now for 44 years. So I'm pretty blessed to be able to do what I do.
Well, you mentioned the wins. I think John Wooden was talking about if you get the most out of a player or reaching your potential, you are winning. You don't always win on the scoreboard. And so I think if you ask, and I know the influence you have, if you ask most of your players, they say that they were winning, even though if it didn't say that in the scoreboard. There's two players you had in particular that I don't know, but I would like to ask them what it was like playing for dear old dad. You got to coach both of your sons, Joshua and Sean. Tell us about that.
Yes, it was, well, a funny story is we are living in Hempfield Township, which surrounds the city of Greensburg. We built a new home. We love it. We're living there. And my son Josh is in eighth grade and playing at the Catholic grade school. So now he's going to go to ninth grade. His choices are to go to Hempfield High School, gigantic high school. I know the coach well, good basketball program, or going to the Catholic school, Greensburg Central Catholic. And of course, the nicest thing about coaching both of them, is that they came with me all the time. Every workout, not every, but so many workouts, they would come. They were ball boys. They would come. They would BS with the players. We went to team camp at Slippery Rock, and my son Sean, who was probably, I don't know, 9 or whatever, he's rooming with two of my better players. It's just like, and they love him and they're kidding with him and stuff. So that stuff was really neat. So I go to Josh, or my wife and I probably did at the time, and I said, "Well, Josh, what are you going to do next year? Hempfield is fine, and we'll pay for Greensburg Central." And at the time, I undervalued how good he was going to become. Okay, he was taller at a young age like I was, and he didn't work as hard as I would like, but he wasn't bad. The grade school coach had him playing center, and I never said a word, I mean, it was a volunteer grade school coach trying to do the right thing, and I never wanted to be, because I'd go up in the stands and people, "Oh, there's Coach Paul," no, I just there to watch and support my son. So we go to Josh and said, "Well, where do you wanna do?" He goes, "Dad," he said, "I wanna go to Greensburg-Salem and play for you." And I said, "Well, couple things. Number one, that means we're going to move. We have to move. We got to have a nice house and a nice neighborhood." And I said, "You don't have to play for me." I mean, and then I said, I mean, we're really good. That's when we were really rolling every year, either winning a section or making the playoffs. And I said, "Josh, I'm not sure how much you'll be able to play for me." And I always thought with both of my sons that I could be realistic with them, like love them more than any of my players. But I was never going to say, well, this is my son and he's not nearly as good as this young man, but I'm going to play him in front of that. That never, ever entered my mind. So, Joshua, we move. We built a new home in Green City of Greensburg. And for like a month or two or whatever it was, we had to drive him to the high school because our home wasn't built yet, but it was all above board. Everyone knew what we were doing, moving into the district. He ended up playing for me as a freshman and was a pretty good player, but he started on and off with a senior, and he did way better than I ever thought he would. Then his sophomore year started, and we were real good again. His junior year, what helped him was we were like 10-1, and he was arguably the best player as a junior. And in the 11th game, he comes down and breaks his wrist, and he's done for the rest of the year. And it was like, it was terrible. I can remember having still have to coach, and my wife has to take him to the hospital. As soon as the game's over, I go. But, and it was a pretty bad break, and he was done for the rest of the year. What that prompted him to do was, he came to every practice after that, but he hated it. He's just sitting there watching us play. And he goes, "Dad," he said, "I'd like to go down to the weight room and work out." And he could do it for his legs. And make a long story short, after the season was over, just as always, I give him a couple weeks off when we're starting for going to be his senior year. I can remember him stealing the ball his first game back after being out for months and going down two hands and slamming it. And his legs, he worked so hard on his legs, he could jump. He was an athlete, and it was like it was cool. He was ended up being a good high school player and got a scholarship to a Division II school, and then he transferred from there and went to a Division III school and scored like 1,100 points there. So he ended up being a good college basketball player and a good golfer. My middle son was a good shooter, but didn't start for me until his senior year. Sophomore year, played JVs. Junior year, played some JVs and a substitute on the varsity team. As a senior, he was good enough to start on a really good team. He was not the best player on the team. He maybe was the best shooter, but not the best player, and we had great success. And so again, I was able to see that, you're not going to play in front of someone else. I wouldn't do that to the other person, and I wouldn't do it to you. And I can remember my children telling me that, "Dad, that was like in school, there was no one ever got on us like, oh, you're playing because of this or that." Sometimes they thought maybe they should have been playing and I didn't play them. I didn't try to be extra hard on them, but I thought I was trying to be as realistic as I could. So that's how they went through. I loved coaching both of them. And the best thing about coaching your children is I got to share everything with them. It was like after games. There was a restaurant in town, the Ground Round, and we would go there all the time. Win or lose, we would sit, they would eat, I would eat, we would talk about the game. It was just, we became very, very close. And I can remember my wife telling me, years later, she goes, "You got to remember that not only you're their dad, but you're their coach." And my oldest sometimes calls me coach, just And to me, that is just so super special.
Sure.
So I had a good time coaching them, and I think they had pretty good careers. They played on good teams. Yeah, so it was kind of fun. My middle one, by the way, it was funny. He's tiny. He takes after my wife's side of the family. He's maybe 5'8" or 5'9", but he was always a very good shooter. When he was 9 years old, that, the Elks foul shooting thing, I don't know. I think they have it all over the world, all over the country anyway. Long story short, Sean came in tied for 2nd in the nation in foul shooting. We went like 6 different sites, and he had to shoot foul shots, and he could shoot foul shots up till when he graduated. He could probably walk in the door now and shoot foul shots, but that was fun. My wife and I were following him around. We end up in Springfield, where the Basketball Hall of Fame was. That's where the finals was that year. So, but it was fun coaching them. I've seen some coaches coach their children, and it turns out awful. I've seen others that it turns out great. And for me, I was lucky and fortunate, and two good kids that worked hard, and ended up being okay players.
That's still such great father-son memories too forever.
Yes, that is the whole thing, yeah, and real quick, the funniest part of this is my daughter, who's the youngest, who lives in New Orleans now. We're going there Wednesday and spending Easter with her. She's a psychologist down there. I didn't ever wanna be accused of, like, "Brenna, what do you wanna play? Wanna play basketball? You wanna wrestle? Tennis? You wanna whatever you wanna do." And we got her lessons for a bunch of things, golf, all kinds of things. And then she had to be in middle school one day. I go, "Brenna, like, you don't seem to like any of this stuff. I mean, whatever you want to do, mom and I will do it for you." And she goes, "Dad, I don't like to sweat." So that kind of eliminated everything. Now I've added this since,
Yeah,
except for mall shopping, which
right.
she has done very well over the years.
At least
But
she's
anyway.
honest, right?
Yes, she didn't like to sweat. Well, she was in her defense, my wife would drag her to all there's pictures of her not even being one, and sitting with her, and when she's 2 and 3, coloring right behind the bench. I'm
Right.
sure she was sick and tired of going to basketball games, that's for sure.
Got some popcorn and cotton candy though, you know?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, she made out like that, that's
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
But, I did some research on you and I got a quote. It does not surprise me that your teams would be defined by three things. Number one, that they would play hard, they'd play man to man defense and be structured on offense. The evolution of the 3-point line. Are you a fan of your team taking a lot of threes when you talk about structured on offense? How many passes before you take a three, or do you want your big man, if he's open, to take a three like some of these college programs are doing?
I'm, as a coach, extremely anal. I have to know where everyone is all the time. And most teams that we play, and every team, not every team, but most teams I see on TV, they're spreading the floor 5 around, they're passing, they're cutting, they're reading the defense, they're screening, they're slipping the screen. All good things, all good things. Rarely have I been blessed, at least in my mind, with players that could read and react like that. Okay, to me, it's like I have some pretty good players. They work pretty hard. No great athletes. I've never coached a player except for one in 31 years now at Greensburg Salem. It went to a Division I school, and that was Cornell. Okay, and which is low Division I. He was a very good player for me. Most of them go D2 or D3 or NAIA. They did. So I don't have great players. We can't just roll the ball out, again, at least in my mind. So I need to know where they're going to be. Also, I think when the game is close, they have to be confident that they're going to know where their teammate is, and they're going to know where to go on the floor. All heck's breaking loose. We're up one against Hempfield. It's standing room only, to allow them to read and react. I mean, it may have worked out perfectly, but in my mind, It's easier to get to a spot where you need to be. I'm so used to this spot. I've been in this spot a million times, and this is what I will do. And that's kind of how we play. The quote that you read is absolutely correct. We are disciplined and we play hard. One of my quotes always in a game is when anyone leaves this gym, home or away, they got to say that we played harder than the other team. And that is important to me. And I stress that like crazy. And I would think that we do play very hard. We aren't dirty. I have a rule that if you get a technical foul for me, doesn't matter whose fault, his fault, your fault, the official's fault, you run 50 sprints the next day in practice. There is no, there's no getting out of it. Coach, and I will go to them, I'll say, and it's become a tradition, I'll say, that guy, you shouldn't have gotten the technical and you were robbed. And when are you ready to run your 50? Like there is no excuse
Right.
for it. And so we go years without a technical foul. That doesn't mean that we don't have tough kids. We do. We don't have kids that play very hard. We do. But I think there are lines that you can't cross. You can't act like an idiot. You can't value your own stats over the team stats. All those kinds of things. And we talk about that often. It got to a point at Greensburg, especially maybe my 20th year there, and we're doing well. Someone would get a technical. And they were like, you could tell in practice how juiced the team was because as soon as practice was over, and that's after sprints, that's after whatever we did, they would sit up in the bleachers and they would watch. And if I was really angry with the young man for whatever reason, I would tell them that a sprint is what I call a sprint. In other words, it could be just down, that's one. Coming back, that's one. It could be a suicide, and that's one. It could be what it's going to be. And usually it's just one, but,
Yeah.
and it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
It's so, yeah, I think I still believe, and everyone tells me how kids are different.
Sure.
When I first started in the set, and they are different in a lot of ways. But I still believe that players want to be coached. I believe that if they believe that you have their best interest at heart, you're never going to embarrass them. You're never going to do anything to humiliate them. You are going to teach them. You are going to correct them. Another quote I have all the time is, I treat and I meet with the boosters once a year. And then that's enough, and I said, it's good for me not to come all the time because then you can talk about me and I'm not there. It can be like an open, nice meeting. One of the things I tell them is that, if you don't like how I'm doing it, then, you can go to another school or you can get together and try to get me fired. You're not going to call me ever and talk to me about playing time. You're not going to call me ever and talk to me about strategy. I said, I only know how to do one or two things well, which is an indictment on me, for Christ's sake. And if my wife was here, she would tell you that, yeah, Paul can't do anything well, but I can coach.
Yeah.
And it's going to be my team. And that's what we are going
Right.
to do.
Yeah.
And that's how it's been. I've been so fortunate. Like, I'm not kidding. Last 2 years, we were not good at Greensburg with me coming back. And this year we were better. Everyone was excited. Not one phone call, not one letter, not one anything about the team or, whatever. And in my 29 years there, I bet there wasn't more than 3 or 4 meetings with a parent or, a letter or something. It just doesn't happen. That doesn't mean at the dinner table, they hate my guts. Some of them may, but, they don't show it. And it's just how it is. I tell them I love all my players. I treat them like my children. I do. And I tell them all the time, if you saw me parenting, I've corrected my children many times. And I can correct your son as well. And that's what I will do.
Sure.
And I remember one time there was a young man that was really, he and I weren't getting along. I was teaching him and I was hard on him. And I remember just telling him, sometimes when you coach, crazy things come in your mind. And I was telling him, this is what you need to do. You need to go home, tell your parents that you don't want to play for me anymore. I said, you can enroll at Greensburg Central Catholic. And back then it was like 5,000 a year. Now it got to be 20,000 a year. But I said, you can pay 5,000 a year, go there. And next year when we play you guys twice, we'll kick your ass both times. So I said, you could either listen to me and do it my way, or you can pay to lose to
Get
me.
hammered.
And
Yeah. That's
And so
awesome.
I don't know if that's all, but that's how I am sometimes. So, yeah.
I heard a term when I was in 7th grade. I'm still fairly close to him to this day, Coach Andy Aiken here in Georgia. He's a Hall of Fame coach as well, but when we got on the line, he got the whistle in his mouth, and somebody said sprints, he said, "Blood and guts." And I'm like, "What the heck's a blood and gut?" That's what his term for suicide. So that's what it's like,
Okay.
blood and guts. I'm like, "Okay, I like that better than the word suicide," but
Yeah. Sometimes things get in your head as a coach that
yeah.
I walk away and my assistants go to me, they go, "How'd you come up with that?" I don't know. Things just sometimes being around it as long as I have, I guess. Yeah.
When you were a young coach, did you have any other coaches that you emulated or tried to learn from?
Yes, for sure. Ron Galbraith at Westminster College was a real mentor, and we turned into being very good friends. I can remember my and our baby Josh at the time walking with his wife and their baby going to the swimming pool in New Wilmington, and we just became very good friends. Plus, I learned from him. Would consider him a disciplinarian without ever raising his voice. He had a way about him. I raise my voice sometimes, but I tell people I talk loud. But but I would never scream at someone, but I would correct them. But Ron Galbraith clearly was a mentor and someone that I really liked. Bernie Matthews at St. Vincent, who was very volatile, but cared about his kids as much as any coach I've ever been around. I remember being his assistant and we're at Millersville or somewhere in the middle of the state or the eastern part of the state. And he really ripped into them after the game we had lost. It was a Christmas tournament and we go back to the room thinking like, okay, well, he ripped into them there. There's going to be no issues tonight. They're quiet and so forth. And I think we'll play better tomorrow. And so I'm in bed. He's in bed. Two beds in the room. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe I'll go downstairs to the lounge, get a drink or a sandwich or something. It's late. And he goes to me, he goes, "Do you think the kids have eaten enough?" Like, what? Have the kids eaten enough? Talking about the players. I said, "I guess so." It was a snowstorm. He says, "You know what?" He says, "Why don't you go, and we'll get them pizzas." Now he had just ripped them. They're probably all almost asleep, but and that's just one small example. He really cared about them. And, it's when you're coaching and you get so close to the players, it's senior night for me is hard sometimes. And our banquet is hard just because, not because I'm missing necessarily good or great players, but I'm missing people that I've spent more time with than their parents have in the last how many months. But I would say Bernie Matthews, I would say Ron Galbraith were two for sure. Now, there were some high school coaches that I really admired, and Tom Myers from Valley High School was one in particular. George Abraham from Butler High School and George Jr. that I really liked. But I would say those two are the best. One quick story about my coaching philosophy. It was my first year as a head coach at Wilmington High School. So I'm 22 years old. We have a lot of seniors back from last year. And though some of them weren't bad players, overall, not a real group of people in my estimation at the time. And there was a lot of battles and I'm young. Heck, I'm 4 or 5 years older than them and I'm trying to coach them. And I remember we go to Slippery Rock and we ended up winning maybe 10 games that year. But we go to Slippery Rock and we decide we're going to hold the ball because they had the two kids that ended up going to Pitt, big 6'9", 6'10" kids. They were brothers. So we hold the ball, we play a great, great game, and we lose like 22-19 at the end of the game. And I couldn't have been more proud of my team. And I went to shake hands and I told my assistant to go down to the locker room because I knew that a couple of my players could be volatile. I mean, they should be excited and happy because they played so well, but they also lost a really tough game. So I go down in the locker room, and there my assistant coach and one of the senior players is shouting and screaming at each other, both of them. So I go down, I break it up, and my assistant tells me that the player kicked the locker, swearing, yelling, punching the locker, carrying on. Not with anyone else but that. And my assistant tried to stop him, and then they had words. All right, well, in my mind, I'm going to remove that player from the team. And there's about 2/3 of the season is over. So in the locker room, after everyone calms down, people taking their showers, getting ready and stuff, and they all sit down, and I tell them, I said, the young man, I said, he will no longer be on the team. I said, you need to come in on Monday. I think it was a Friday game or Saturday, I can't remember, and bring in your uniform. I thought that was the right thing to do. So we're on the bus ride. And it's real. I mean, it's always quiet when we lose, and you can talk quietly, but it felt different. So we're getting off the bus at Wilmington High School, and the captain goes to me. He says, "Coach, we would like to speak with you, the team." I said, "Okay." Now I'm 22, my first head coaching job. I I walk in, and at Wilmington, I'm sure you remember, there was a universal machine in the middle of the locker room. So people sat around it. So half the time, if I was sitting, I couldn't see 3 or 4 people. That's just how the locker room was. So the captain steps up, and I'm nervous. I'm 22. And my assistant is really nervous too, because he was involved in this, uh, though I think no fault of his own. But anyway, captain goes to me, "Coach, we think it's unfair that you throw so and so off the team." Now, right now, inside of me is so nervous, and so I'm trying not to let it show. And he says, "If you don't," gives me an ultimatum. He says, "We're going to walk out and we will quit." Now I'm thinking, how will this go with the administrators at Wilmington when we don't have a team tomorrow when they all quit, right? So I have like seconds to think about what I'm going to do or say. And I got up. They were all looking at me. Didn't yell, didn't say a word. I walked over to the door. I opened it up, and I said, "Everyone that wants to leave, leave." And the captain goes to me, he goes, "No, no, you don't understand. We're going to leave. You won't have a team." I said, "Anyone that wants to leave, leave." No one left. I wish a couple of them would have. We ended up playing the last so many games with everyone. The one gentleman I threw off the team was off the team. Nothing changed, though he and his family came to a couple games to heckle me from the stands. But I think that shaped a lot of how I coach and how I feel and how confident I have become, is that it's going to be my way. Back then at 22, I'm not sure, I had a proven theory on how to do things. I surely do now, but it's going to be this way. I have your best interest at heart, but also you're not running the deal here.
Yeah.
It's my team, and no one left. And I think about that sometimes, how it could have been different if I would have,
Yeah.
excuse me, let him on the team or something like that. Yeah, so every great once in a while, I think about that.
Wow. That's a heck of a story. I'm sitting there going, please don't say no. That coach.
Yeah, oh, yeah, down deep, I
Oh
was
my.
scared.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and my assistant too, he was just shaking because he's thinking, because we were friends, he goes, "What did I do to Coach Paul that,
Yeah.
my coaching stint would be less than a year old as a
Right.
head coach?"
But going back, you mentioned Coach Galbraith. I loved him. And
Yes.
just, from our
Yeah,
times at Titan basketball camp that, Westminster College.
yes. Yeah, he was a very good coach, understood the game really well, and he was a gentleman. And he was, and you can be, I mean, he would get angry and he would get on people, but it was never malicious or doing anything crazy, and he was smart. And yeah, I learned a lot from him, and I can remember I became really good friends with a old-time official years later, and it's funny, I've spoken at 2 funerals. Galbraith's, they asked me to speak at the funeral, at the mass or at the church. And this official that I'm talking about, and I can remember the official telling me about Galbraith. He goes, he was truly a gentleman. And to me, that means a lot.
Sure.
He could coach. He knew what he was doing. He wasn't bullied by anyone, but he did not have to act like a horse's ass, and he never did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember as a little kid watching him coach. He'd go on one knee on a towel and just sit
Yes.
there and watch. It's like, when's he gonna get mad? And I remember watching some of the Titan practices. It was this strong, calming voice. I never once heard him yell. He did 2 things that I'll never forget. One, he did personally for me. My dad was playing racquetball, and he coached Galbraith, who was a state champion racquetball. He was on the 2nd
Yes.
court, and my brother and I, we were in the gym practicing basketball, and Coach Galbraith had just come out of the stairwell, and I got done practicing, and he said, "Working on your game," and I guess I was kind of a little hot shot at the time. It's probably between 5th and 6th grade, and he knew I had some ability. And he said, he put his arm right on my shoulder, and he said, "I like the way you work hard. Just remember, you can never be too good." And I thought that was
Sure.
gold. And he was basically saying, "I know you think you're a little hot shot, Carver, but the second thing he did, there was a intramural tennis league, faculty tennis league. And my dad and Dale Hess, I think Dale Hess was a science professor at Westminster, were buddies and they were partners. And it was a Saturday afternoon, maybe late Saturday morning. And my dad and Dale Hess were in the championship against Coach Galbraith. And I forgot who Coach Galbraith's partner was. But I was like a ball boy. I was down there just, my dad knew, he said at an early age, I'd be a tennis guy someday because I just sit there and watch the ball back and forth. But I didn't have that much interest, but I was watching the match. And I know my dad and Dale Hess won. And Coach Galbraith was very quiet. You could tell he's ticked off, but he showed no emotion other than a little bit more stoicism than usual. About an hour and a half later, we're having lunch on a Saturday afternoon, and there's a knock on the door. And my mom opens the door, and who walks down into our kitchen? He's got Foster Grant black sunglasses, a collared shirt buttoned up. He's got a towel over his arm and a silver tray and a Michelob beer. And he goes, "The spoils go to the victor. Congratulations."
Yeah.
That
That's
was
something he would do.
so
Yes.
classy. I'm thinking an hour later, this guy was ticked off. And he also went to Dr. Hess's house and gave him a Michelob. But there's a picture of my dad sitting there and Coach Galbraith sitting there like a waiter. That was so classy to finish in second. And he was just an
Yeah.
awesome guy. Yeah,
Sure.
amazing
Yeah,
man.
he was.
I want to ask you about some of the changes of the rules of the game. I mean, we could talk for hours about this, but the one that gets me more crazy than ever because I was brought up and very blessed. I call them fundamentalists. I learned fundamentals from you, from Coach Galbraith, from the many coaches at the Titan camp. This is the way you dribble. And I watch today's dribbling, carrying these days,
You mean
thinking,
not like this?
yeah,
Not
I'm
like
thinking,
this.
how many guys could I take in free layup? It's like, it's ridiculous. I mean, at what point did they just start allowing this? Because now they're even holding it for seconds. And does that drive you crazy or what do you coach? Just go with
Yeah.
what's allowed?
I do not coach that. I still coach keep your hand on top of the ball, but you're right. They do let things like that go. And still, you can tell how old I am. There are times in the game when one of my players is guarding the other point guard, and I will yell, "He's palming it." They probably haven't called palming in high school in
Yeah.
forever, but that does drive me a little bit crazy. Yes, it does. And if you watch on TV, the college game or the pros, I mean, what an advantage to have the ball and be able to take 8 steps in one dribble, it's just but, yeah, that does drive me a little bit nuts.
It also, I think, hurts you as a ball handler because you see some of these steals when the person's got the ball up. If you're smart on defense, you can get under that sometimes.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't like it, but I mean, it evolves. Do I like some teams taking 53 pointers? No. Do I like people taking bad shots? No. I think as a high school coach, too many high school coaches, especially younger ones, are afraid to correct a player. You know, I had a very good player, 6'4", 220, was a tight end and played at Bucknell. And he was as valuable as anyone we had. He'd rebound, he'd set screens, he'd defend, make layups, and that was perfect. And I can remember first practice. He wasn't around a lot, obviously, in the fall because he played football. First practice, and we knew we were going to be good. The year before, we won a section. We have a lot of people back. His name was David. So everyone comes running over in the excitement of the first practice. And I go, David. And he goes, yeah, coach. I go, how many touches did you get this year in football? High school football tight end. And he was really proud. He said, 6'8", like would throw to the tight end some. I mean, he was involved. I go, I'll double that. And the kids just busted out laughing because David couldn't shoot. And he wasn't going to shoot if he can't shoot. I said, David, you're as valuable as any. I said, you're like a lineman on a football team. The running back may get all the accolades, but he's no better than the best offensive lineman. I said, you are one of my best players. I said, you rebound, you play defense. I said, you make layups. And he bought into that. Absolutely. I remember him catching a ball at the foul line, pump faking, and he was open, throwing it to the next guy and going to screen away. And I remember a friend of mine was in the stands and we happened to be playing Greensburg Central Catholic. This was a summer league game. The parents of the Central people were saying, I can't believe that David Gibson didn't shoot that. And by the way, we were up by 30 at the time. Okay. It's like, no, we're doing it all right. David is as valuable as anyone. If you can't shoot it well, you shouldn't shoot it. Uh, you're a great shooter. Why? Well, you shoot 300, 400, 200 jump shots every day outside. Okay. Well, I'm a football guy too, and I'm lifting all the time, and I don't get to shoot very much. Who should be a better shooter? The guy that's shooting 300, 400 shots a day. The weightlifting guy should be a better rebounder, maybe a better defender. I have no problem with that. That's why I liked having some football guys on my team. You can learn to play without the ball. You don't have to. So many times people take bad shots, and that doesn't mean I don't tell people they can't shoot. I try to present it like, I'll always say, Johnny, you think that was a good shot? Well, I thought maybe I could make it. I said, well, how many shots have you shot in the off season? How many times have you practiced that? I think it'd have been better to get a little closer. And they seem to get the idea. I'm not screaming, don't shoot, but I'm taking bad shots. I've seen more games lost on college and in the NBA and high school by just taking bad shots. Take good shots. If you miss a good shot, just like you had said earlier, you do everything that you can do with what you have. You end up losing. If you think you did it the right way, heck, you're not going to win all the
Right.
games. But
Yeah.
taking bad shots gives the other team a gigantic advantage. So, that's
Yeah.
another thing I hate, all the threes that are
Right.
taken.
A bad shot's almost a turnover. It's percentage
Yeah,
wise, you don't get the
absolutely.
offensive rebound. Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we are talking about dribbling, and I'm very glad this happened years ago that Pete Maravich and his dad over when he was at LSU started the Little Tigers. No, excuse me, maybe I think it was at Clemson when they started the Little Tigers, which you guys, was it you and Coach Galbraith that started the Titan Tykes?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was one thing that I remembered. And then I just thought when it's funny for a guy like me that was a forward that wasn't a great ball handler, I always seemed to have ball handling drills at Coach Galbraith's camp. And I was just thinking this would be kind of nice too, get some of the better players and call them the Titan Tykes, you know, perform at the Westminster's halftimes, some of their halftimes. And then it ultimately ended up being at some of Wilmington's teams that I coached, their halftimes. I just think, again, someone got to get excited about what they want to do. To me, like youth basketball, I'm not a gigantic AAU, excited about AAU. I understand that playing a lot of games can be helpful, no question about that. And I don't tell my players they can't play AAU or anything like that. And a number of my players do. I do remind them every once in a while if they've missed a couple workouts, I'll go, "Where were you?" And I go, "Coach, we had AAU practice." I said, "Ah, I forget. Next year, who's the head coach at our high school? Is it John Smith, the AAU coach, or is it me?" And no, and I would only say that to players that know me and like me, and they go, put their head down. "Okay, coach. I will try to be here whenever I
Yeah,
can be here." But yeah, I just think so you do a Titans hikes or whatever you wanna call it with younger players, and they get excited. All of a sudden, this is pretty cool. I'm learning a skill, they're practicing it at home, they're getting to show off in front of a lot of people at halftime. Maybe one of those young men will really spend additional time at his game, and that's what makes it better. When I watch youth basketball, it's like I tell my youth coaches, you got to make it fun. You got to be some discipline. You can't let them do anything they want to do. It's got to be fun. You got to make them want to come back, want to practice on their own, and want to work at basketball. And if you do that, you're doing me a great service.
a day in fifth grade, Mr. Kennedy came into Miss Wilson's history class, and he wanted to see Richie Haltunen and I outside in the hallway. And he told us, and it felt like David Stern saying, with the second pick from the Boston Celtics in the NBA draft, he said that we made the Titan Tykes. And I'll show you. We're proud. It said Titan basketball. This was the original jersey of fifth grade. And
Yes.
it shrunk several times, but I still have this. My mom gave
I
it
was
to
going to
me.
say you weren't big, but you weren't that
Yeah,
small, I don't
man. And
think.
this thing might be going in my casket with me, but I don't think that they need it in Springfield. But anyway, what that taught us so many things that it was a ball handling group, and we start out just the basic fundamentals. And I'll never forget after the first practice, Richie and I were the only two in the inaugural class. We were the only two fifth graders, and then I think there was 10 or 12 sixth graders. And
Uh-huh.
my dad said to me after the first practice, he said, "You were the worst one out there." And the stuff that you guys taught us was like the daily discipline that you're going to do your homework. You do your ball handling every day. And by golly, I did. And it was the ball became a part of us. And I see
Hmm.
videos now like Peyton Pritchard in doing his workouts and stuff, and that ball is this far off the ground. And it's really just a confidence builder. And I tell kids
Hmm.
with tennis, it's no different than shooting your free throws, and you just put in the time. You work on your serve. It's just that mundane over and over and over again. And we would come out performing at the halftime, and the college kids would get so fired up to see the Titan Tikes. But I mean, you guys talked about this, the importance of setting goals and writing them down, and I could give you a list of those. I won't take up the public's time, but I got into trouble when I was down south in ninth grade because of the Titan Tikes. Our coach called out. He said we were going to stall. We were up by I don't know 8 or 10, and it was near the end of the game. We were stalling. So my buddy Cash Covington was probably the two guard, but we're out front, and he passes me the ball. Well, the guy got close to me. I took it between my legs, and then he got close to me again. I took it through my other leg, and then I took it around my back, and then he got close to me. I passed it to Cash. Eventually, Cash throws it back to me, and I start going to town on this guy because I knew he couldn't take the ball from me. And I was just
Hmm.
dealing on him, behind the back, whatever. That wasn't showing off. It's just that's the ball became a part of me. So Monday at practice, the coach said, "Next time we get in the stall, you pass the ball because nobody can steal it from you." And the kid never stole it from me. And he said, "Carver, none of this through the legs, shit either." And after practice, Cash came up to me. He said, "You're mad about what coach said to you." I said, "Yeah, because the kid couldn't take it from me." I, you know,
Yeah.
but I, and I kind of indirectly think about you during the week when I'm teaching tennis. A ball will be behind my back, and I can flip the racket behind my back. That's just dribbling a basketball behind my back. It's not being a show off. So
Yeah, if you've put in a million hours doing that, you should, yeah,
it sure felt
that
like it.
that's what it takes. Now, if you've never practiced it and try that, that's when there's an
Yeah,
issue.
yeah. Well, I want to share something with you because I reached out to Richie Haltoon and I told him we are talking today, and I want to read something to you. It's gonna hopefully I get through this because it's pretty powerful, and I agree with the sentiments of Richie. But I asked him, I said, is there anything that you would like me to ask Coach when I talk to him? And he said, yes. And so he sent me this. I'm going to read it to you. He said, let's see. He said, something I always wanted to ask Coach. I want to ask Coach Sapotichne, do you even realize the impacts Titan Tykes had on us? Because for me, it was life changing. I still remember the two of us getting called into the hallway by Mr. Kennedy at New Wilmington Elementary and being told we made it. I still have that letter signed by Coach Sapotichne saying we were an official Titan Tyke. That moment is one of the best of my childhood. Honestly, probably still top 5 of my life. And those orange basketballs we got at the first practice with our names written in black magic marker, priceless. He said, but what it meant to me went deeper than that. I struggled in school with what I now know was undiagnosed ADD. Honestly, as a teacher now, I would have dreaded having me in the class. I couldn't sit still, couldn't focus to save my life, and had zero confidence. Then the magic of Titan Tykes happened and everything changed. For the first time, I had focus, not just motivation, but a mission and a newfound belief in myself. Coach Sapotichne, you gave that confidence. You gave me that. You gave me that confidence. My best childhood memories are from those days in New Wilmington, dribbling out onto the court at halftime, at the high school and college games, with the pep band playing, alongside with my co-captain sidekick, Rob, performing ball handling drills, stutter dribbles, figure eights, pistol Pete drills, spinning the ball on our fingers, etc. But nothing, and this is where I agree with Richie totally, nothing, and I mean nothing matched hearing your name called on the PA for your layup. Pure thrill of victory or agony of defeat. The crowd groaned if you missed and erupting when you made your layup. Most of the fans actually stayed in their seats for our halftime performance. And the best part was having the Westminster College cheerleaders jumping up to cheer when the ball went in. You're 9 years old and college cheerleaders are cheering for you. Holy smokes, does life get any better than that? Wow. It was especially gratifying when the high school kids recognized you. Hey, that's Doc's kid. That made my dad proud and made me proud of myself. I remember practicing those left-handed layups for hours and hours in my driveway on the backyard hoop my dad built on the side of the old elm tree, or over at the court behind your house, over and over, imagining that moment every time. And of course, the cheerleaders going crazy with every make that we made. It's funny how simple life was back then, but making that layup felt like the most important thing in the world. And after all the trials and tribulation life brings, you realize it still ranks right up there. Not just a layup, but what it represented. Coach, you didn't just teach us the game of basketball, you changed lives. You changed mine. Much love, Richie Heltzuner. And I agree with my buddy Rich. So just,
That is a really nice letter.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just from 5th grade on, ball handler. So, and he taught us fundamentals. And it's like, and I'm sure many of your players agree with that. Just that I understand that, like putting your foot down, denying the baseline, and the way you set a pick, run off the pick. It's just those fundamentals, those core principles are just awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's very nice. And it is surprising, but it no longer amazes me that players will bring things up to me when there's a reunion and I'm there, or they're honoring a team and the players are coming and they'll start talking about, Coach, do you remember the time in the locker room? I mean, so it is important on what you say and how you say it to young players, young people. And I found that out more and more over the years. You can really help. And that was so nice of a comment by him. And the funniest thing about that is my wife and I, we owned a vacation home in Lewis, Delaware, and we were across the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. And we owned it for 20 years and we would go there often. And I'm driving across the bridge, which is always a little bit hectic with traffic and you're up so high. And I get a call and it doesn't give a name. My wife always says, well, don't answer. But in my position, because sometimes grandparents will call about something or I don't have everyone's numbers, so I picked up. And it was Rich. And I'm crossing the Chesapeake Bay Bridge and he starts talking to me about the Titan Tykes. And I hadn't literally spoken to him or thought about him. I don't mean that in a bad way, in well over 40 years. And we're talking, and I can remember my wife looking at me like, "Who are you talking to?" And I go, "You won't even believe it." And we talked for about a good 20 minutes or so, and, it was yeah, again, another reason why I just love coaching and why it's so rewarding to me that people, you touch people's lives.
Yeah. Well, and I moved after 6th grade down south, but when I got through the magic of Facebook, Richie reached out to me and told me he talked to you, and I'm like, "Give me his number. I wanna talk to coach too," and,
Yeah,
you know
he did. It was great. It was
awesome.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Just out of the clear blue, it was funny, and, I remembered him. Obviously, I remember you, but yeah, it was, like, so cool. He told me what did he tell me? Something about, "That was the greatest day of my life getting that letter." He said, "That was better than graduating high school." It's like I'm laughing as I'm driving across the bridge, but anyway.
Well, but that was everything, and you talking about not being able to sleep. When it was halftime, I mean, the day it was like, okay, a few hours before the game, I remember putting my Titan Tight stuff in my little gym bag, and it was like the Titans had a game at 7, and we were performing at halftime. We had a game, and when we'd walk into the gym, people were like, "Oh, yeah, Titan Tights are here." And after the college teams would come out, we're in the hallway holding our basketballs, and they play Sweet Georgia Brown, and it's like, I'm getting chills thinking about it. It's like going out there, and it's like we had the routine, and it was just like boom, boom. It was just, oh man. I was at Westminster for Dr. Mustard's funeral a couple years ago, and I walked into the gym and I took a picture at center court. I sent it to Richie. I said, "Me and you passing back
Oh,
and forth, man." And it's like I always thought that Richie and I would be like two guards at Westminster. He was a lefty, I was a righty. It just, man, just awesome
yeah.
times. But anyway, I don't want to take too much of your time, but reminiscing. But I want to fire a couple quick questions at you. Who do you think the all time your all time favorite coach is, college or pro? If you can narrow it down to one.
Well, right now, my all-time favorite is Coach Izzo for Michigan State. I like him a lot. I like how he coaches every possession. That I know that sometimes he gets a bad rap because, he can be really loud and vocal and in someone's face. But I know in speaking to him and hearing him how much he cares about the kids and how he teaches basketball. And he believes, and I believe that there's a right way to do it, and I admire that very, very much. Over the years, Dean Smith I like so much and a number of others, but I would say right now, Coach Izzo is the person that I watched that game last night, and I'm old and I stayed up and I watched all of it, and I was rooting for him, but they weren't good enough. Yeah, he's someone that I admire a lot. And, I'll tell you what real quick what I did was I was able to, when I became the Greensburg-Salem coach, because I wasn't a teacher anymore, I was working in private business being a real estate appraiser. I was able to go every year to a different university and watch practice. Now, I mean, I've been everywhere. I've been at Kansas's practices. I've been at North Carolina's. I've been at Duke's. I've been at Villanova's with Rolly Massimino. I've been at Georgia's practice. I've been at Oklahoma's practice. I would usually go myself. I would call ahead and say, "I'm just a high school coach from Western Pennsylvania. I'd like to come and watch practice." And usually they would let me, and most of the time everyone ignored me, but it was pretty cool being there. But every once in a while, like a Larry Brown, who I loved when he was at Kansas, for an hour after practice, just he and I were sitting in the gym, just chatting and watching. And then when I started to develop my own philosophy on coaching, when I first started, it was like I change everything. Well, I like how he does it or how he does it. Then it got to a point, no, I kind of like what I do, but can I pick up one or two or three little things in doing that? And Coach Calipari and I became good friends. And I can remember one day he's coaching the New Jersey Nets, and it was in September before we had started practice. And he goes, "Coach, I know how much you like watching practices." He says, "We're in Atlantic City for training." He says, "Come down." He says, "Come down and watch us practice." So I was able to do that. And then that night, we went out to an Italian restaurant for dinner, and it was Coach Calipari, the general manager, Rick Majerus, who is a legendary coach at Utah, others there. And me, a high school coach. But I learned so much and stole so much and adapted so much that I saw, and that is kind of what shaped how I coach now. So,
That's so great.
so there were a lot of good coaches that I enjoyed
Yeah.
watching.
That's why you're good because you learn from others. That's and to be a fly in the wall, hear some of those conversations.
Yes, for
Wow.
sure. Some
Yeah.
interesting days.
I like that. It's just
Yes.
the evolving and just never ever stop learning. That's so great.
Yeah. No, even to today, I mean, people make fun. My old players come back from they're in their 50s, from Greensburg, and they're going, Coach, you're still running the same stuff. And I said, there's some tweaks.
All
There's
right.
definitely some tweaks.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, it works. And, I've developed more tweaks and more little nuances to what I do. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's no reason to change. And I'm too old to throw everything out. And we're just going to come down. And as soon as someone is open, we're shooting a three. We're
Yeah.
just not going to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm not going to ask you a question, who's your all time favorite player because it's a team game. But who would you think is your all time? It doesn't have to be the greatest team of all time, but who's your all time favorite team, college or pro?
Boy, think about that. I know the older I get, the more teams I dislike, and I will sit downstairs. I'm in my den now, and Jan will be upstairs so many steps, and every once in a while she'll yell at me. She goes, "Why are you yelling at the TV?" She
Oh,
said, "Who's playing?" And I say, "Who's playing?" And she goes, "Well, you don't know anyone there. Well, I hate this one team or how they play, so I root against them." The best high school player was Dick DeVinzio. Went to Springdale, Ambridge, and Duke. Team wise, I loved the Indiana team when Bobby Knight coached them and they went undefeated. I loved how they played. I saw Bobby Knight probably 4 or 5 different times in practice. I would go there. Sometimes I was the only one outside of Indiana people there. I did not like how he acted. I wouldn't want my children to have played for him, but how he coached and how he got the most out of his players and how they played as a team, I loved that. So that was a team for sure that I followed a lot and enjoyed.
I remember that Scott Benson or excuse me,
Yes.
Kent Benson, Scott May, Quinn Buckner.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's legend. And I think they would have won it the year before, but didn't Scott May break his wrist?
I think so. I think
Yeah,
you're right. Yeah, they did have an injury and they were still very good, but not as good as that
yeah.
undefeated team.
And it's amazing how many of his players, you hear stories of him still loved the way
Yeah.
he put grew kids into men. All right, tough one here. We could be having a drink at a bar. Who's your all-time starting five in the pros?
Oh, boy. Michael Jordan, for sure. I love Michael Jordan way more than LeBron, just me personally, though I recognize what a great player LeBron is. But Michael Jordan, I loved Magic Johnson. I loved Kareem. I remember rooting for those Laker teams. I hate the Lakers now, but when I was growing up and watching those guys play, I really like those teams from Boston, Larry Bird, John Havlicek, even others that I loved. I mean, I wouldn't be in my top five, but Sam Jones and Casey Jones and all those guys were such great players. And I enjoyed watching Boston play a lot as a NBA team. Talked about Elgin Baylor, who was really good. Not one of the 5 best ever, but he could have been on my team.
Sure.
I liked him very much. Loved Bill Walton in college.
Mm,
What a great player he
yeah,
was in college. I still remember that final game where he went 21 for 22 or 20 for 21 or something. He was phenomenal. He
yeah,
was unbelievable.
yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of great players. I just don't like when people come down and seems like they care more about themselves than the team or they're taking bad shots. Those are things
Yeah.
that really get my goat.
Well, there's the coach in you coming out because this person fills a role, this person fills a role, and
Yeah.
pieces of the puzzle.
And if everyone does their role,
Right.
you maybe can't overcome an unbelievably great team or a team that's so much better than you. But a team that's just a little bit better than you, if everyone does their role and everyone does it the right way, it's amazing some of the things how you can win. And I've been fortunate to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So
All right, one last question for you. And I'm just curious from everybody. I usually ask this question. What's your all-time favorite book,
Hmm.
sports or
Okay.
otherwise?
Yeah. Well, there's a number of them. I loved To Kill a Mockingbird, and still to this day, The Grapes of Wrath. I just my children showed me how to download books on Audible or stuff like that. And so now for Christmas, that's what I get. Here's four, Dad, we got for you and stuff like that. They Call Me Coach, Johnny Wooden's book. I love that very much. I love for another reason Season on the Brink with Bobby Knight, which really showed a lot of his flaws and also just what a great coach he was. But me being at his practices and then reading about, I saw some of that stuff, I'm saying to myself.
Yeah,
So that was an interesting book, and I enjoyed that very much. So those are some of the ones. One of the reasons I majored in English in Westminster was I was my junior year in high school, and the JV coach goes to me. He was an English teacher. He goes, Paul, he goes, what books have you read? And the list was pretty short. He said he was a good guy. He was a good guy. And he says, I'm telling you what, I'm going to give you, and you've heard this story before, but it was 20 or 30 novels. I'm going to give a list. And before you graduate, it'd be nice if you read those before you go to college. And I took it to heart, just like some of my players have done. And I can remember, here I was a senior in high school and, a pretty good player and everyone, and I always had a novel with me. I was, so I enjoyed reading. And then it got to a point I got too busy in my business, audiobooks. Oh my God, I listen to audiobooks all the time.
sure.
Crazy stuff, but I love listening to the spoken word,
Right.
and it also keeps me awake at night when I'm driving, so because I'm concentrating on someone talking. If I
Sure.
listen to music, I'm gonna go off the road if I'm
Yeah.
driving, but,
Yeah.
yeah, so no, I was a big reader. My wife to this day is, a big reader, reading a book all the time, and I think I thank that English teacher, JV coach for, and that's why I majored. People ask,
Sure.
"Well, why'd you major in English?" I like to read.
Right.
I didn't like to read until I did that,
Yeah.
but I like to read.
Exactly. It's funny. One of the last interviews that Joe Buck did with Bobby Knight, he said that because his grandmother and mother always made him read, he was a big history buff,
Mhm.
that he told his players, when you're on the bus, you're on road trips, you're going to have a book. And if I don't like the one you're reading, I'll give you a book to read. But all his players, they had to have a book. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, and I can see him saying that too, and I can see him replacing the book that they were reading with another
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well.
Being,
That's interesting.
being very
Yes.
colorful the way he'd explain it too.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to wrap up with a few things that no doubt why you're a Hall of Fame coach, that some of the notes I took, that you got to work at it. I don't care what profession you're in, you got to work at it. And you mentioned having a difficult coach. Difficult coaches make us better. And you know that coach cares. It's not always because it's easy or they like you. That something has to be important to you to be successful. I love the fact that you took an ad in the paper, the ripple effect, that you got your job at a summer camp, then you took another ad. I guess it was the Hulk ad. Was that the Westminster's
Yeah.
paper?
Yeah, what was it called?
The
The
Hulk ad.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it was like
Yeah,
every
I
other
cut
week, right?
Yes, yeah, it
Yeah.
was every other week.
Okay.
I cut it out. Why it was probably in the Newcastle paper too,
Okay.
but I remember cutting it out. I'll still remember that and giving it to him, and he's looking at me and like, yeah, that changed everything. Yes.
From an ad in the paper to a Hall of Famer. I think that's awesome. And I love the fact that you said you had supportive parents. I think that's great. I think too many times you hear the extreme where mom and dad did everything or mom and dad didn't care. You said that one of the mantras that you wanted to have always be said about your teams, which I think is awesome, says, we play harder than any other team. I remember the coveted award at basketball camp was the Hustle Award.
Mhm.
And there was one that I was in the finals for called King Ball Handling. I did not win that, but the award that I got, of all my tennis trophies and baseball stuff, one of my most prized possessions was 1977 in basketball camp, best defensive player. And I thought, yeah, two-way player. I was better at
Ex
defense than offense.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, that was and I remember the Hustle Award too, and we took that real serious as
Sure.
coaches working at camp, who is really deserving of that. We
Yeah.
did not wanna give it to someone that
Yeah.
didn't always work hard.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think Richie Haltunen won it one year when I wasn't there. I think that's awesome. You mentioned 2 mentors, 2 coaches, Bernie Matthews and Coach Ron Galbraith. Great ripple effect there. And one of the last things you said was get excited about what you do. I don't know how any successful person could be successful without having passion, being excited what they do.
Yeah,
But,
I agree, and that's my goal with my players is that because then they'll work on their own, then they'll spend time, then they'll care more about it because they really want to do it, and
yeah,
yeah, I agree with that
yeah,
wholeheartedly.
yeah. I'm sure you're familiar with the quote that, coach/teacher perfects eternity. Nobody knows where the influence stops.
Yes,
Well, I
and
appreciate the influence you had on me and some of the successful things that I've achieved just because of the daily discipline and stuff I learned from the Titan Tyson from you. So again,
well,
coach,
thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. My coaching is I still love it. I'm sure as much as I ever did. When I was interviewed for my job back at Greensburg Salem 2 years ago, it was an unfair interview because there were 5 people and 2 of them played for me. They were principals now, but they were my players. And the superintendent came to all our games. He wasn't a superintendent then. And I can remember the new AD sitting there thinking like, geez, I better vote for this guy because, it's like they love him.
yeah.
But yeah, it's but they asked me, I said, "Do you have an exit plan?" Of course, I guess when 71 or so whatever it was, 70, 71 at the time, and I said, "No." And someone asked me this past year, they said, "How long are you gonna continue to do this?" And I said 2 things. Number 1 is if Greensburg doesn't want me anymore, I'm never gonna be that guy that, I'm gonna battle, fight, you don't want me, I don't wanna be there. Just someone call me, whisper to me, "Coach, you know what? We think it's time." I will resign, retire. And number 2, I tell them, "I'm gonna coach here until either you don't want me or I can't find the gym anymore." And I don't know when I can't find the
Yeah,
gym, then maybe
yeah,
it is time for me
yeah,
to retire.
yeah.
So, but yeah,
That's awesome. Well, I hope you coach many
thank you.
more years, and I've enjoyed the internet letting me follow along with your team. So again, I
Oh,
appreciate. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I appreciate you following. Sometimes again, you don't realize, especially with the internet, who knows what we're doing, how we're doing it, and things like that. So that's cool.
Well, again, I'll let you get running because I know it's March Madness time. But again, Coach, I appreciate your time and all the insights wisdom and nuggets you've dropped today. I appreciate it.
Well, this was very nice for me, and I thank you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So for you out there, if you like this episode, please forward it, subscribe, send it to some friends that you know might benefit from it. So until next time, make the most of your time and hang tough.